we'll talk a little bit here about the overarching, when you purchase the code, purchase the integration, what do you do next to connect it to your own service, your own endpoint?
Right. So the main thing in order to configure this to automatically target your endpoints instead of our own is that if you go ahead and download our source code, there is a DB sync, which has all of our stuff for our sync engine. And inside of there specifically is RecordLinc sync common. And in there, you want to go down to this configuration loader. This configuration loader class is basically a class that loads all the settings from a Microsoft configuration XML file that resides as a sidecar to the application. So it's basically an it's an XML file, settings file that resides next to the application and basically allows you to configure everything you need. And in addition, we also refresh the settings each time, so you can hot swap the file while the service is running if you want to change some settings during the process. Currently, the settings file does not have any level of encryption on it, but that could certainly be employed. So first things to quickly mention is anything that is unnoted automatically returns an empty string, but you can override how many items are batched to the web service at a time by modifying the number here. The sync interval is, of course, the time in between syncs. So the traditional time for that right now is actually set up to be 30 minutes. So it will automatically perform that every 30 minutes. And here is our URLs that you can define. So in your case, you would actually retarget your own process. So in this, you would go ahead and update these. We've got the debug and release versions of what you want to have targeted. This API path is used as a sub-item for all the endpoints that the system utilizes. And so that is traditionally RL API. So a full path as to what this would look like is https recordlinc.com/RL API/ and then whatever the rest of this is, right? And so this allows you to build a URL as to which to send the information to. So that's just kind of briefly how that works. And you can override anything on every one of these endpoints to target a different endpoint and so on. All of the communications for this web service and so on are communicated through what I call sorry, I just really closed it. The web results, right? And so these web results basically have the object containers and so on, so you can actually see what each response from the web service might look like and how you'd parse out that detail. And we utilize just a standard JSON parsing engine from Microsoft in order to do that. And of course, that can be replaced with anything as well. But yeah, that's kind of the basics on how to configure it. You can kind of come in here and play with the configuration options, the default plugin and so on. So if you wanted to create your own plugins to communicate with this, then you could hook that up here as well. And yeah, that's kind of the basics of it. It does integrate, of course, with Dentrix Enterprise, Dentrix, and Eaglesoft currently. And so each one of those configurations currently has its own installer. And each one of the install projects is listed down here. You'd want to just go ahead and open those up and update the information as necessary. And then you should be able to just build that, install, and deploy it. Specifically in regards to Dentrix, there is it actually relies on a couple of resources that sit inside of the back end of the database. So we've got a create user and a user key. So in this case, since you'd be purchasing the code and so on and executing it as your own, you do actually need to replace those with your keys from Dentrix instead of utilizing the RecordLinc ones. And that is And so that will allow you to utilize your personal credentials against the database instead of
And
ours.
with all the integrations that we do, we follow the API program. So Eaglesoft has theirs, Dentrix has theirs. All whoever's listening to this, I can always introduce them to those folks as well. So
Right.
we want to help. We want to help the Eaglesoft and Dentrix programs grow, and this kind of gives them an opportunity, the potential customers, with a quick path to get the a well-built integration out there in the market quickly at a reasonable price. We've spent over $100,000 building this product just even as it is today, and we will continually enhance it and be able to launch those updates as well. So Martin, one of the things you mentioned early on was about encryption. Can you explain why that why that is, why somebody would use that, or why that hasn't been implemented?
Encryption, specifically,
or maybe at the very beginning you mentioned on the previous file something. Was it encryption
or the authorization? Yeah. So as part of each request that we actually send, there is the initial process of actually configuring the application is that you install it, and then when you run it for the very first time, it will perform some additional accesses. And so if you bring up in this case, let me bring back in here the web helper here. So the web helper actually goes and broadcasts the information back out to the web service utilizing a login token. So this token is something that the login service has already responded to us with, and we store this inside of the information. And so that we can actually resubmit this as an authorization bearer token specifically to inform you of the login request. This way you can make sure that all of your information is private and secured over the network so that you don't have to worry about anything.
All right, great. So, all right, so we send them the code. We've already recorded a couple training videos, and once they make the purchase, we send over the code. We send over the XML files and everything that they need, along with this video and several other trainings. So that's it, I think, for this video. Martin, thanks for your time.
Yep, no problem.